right, but I'd first like to start off with a little bit of an introduction of our speakers today. Starting first with Matt. Born and raised in Makaha, Oʻahu, Matt Bruening draws inspiration from Hawaii's people, architecture, and natural beauty. His resort-inspired designs blend versatility and timeless style, focusing on their wearers' needs. From cherished everyday staples to standout formal wear, Bruening's collections reflects casual sophistication and refined elegance, seamlessly fitting every moment and occasion. And Rumi Murakami Robertson is the owner and designer of the Hawaii-based independent fashion brand Rumi Murakami, which launched in 2013. At an early age, Rumi spent hours poring over her mother's bazaar magazines and recreating designs using makeshift patterns and an old singer. Influenced deeply by her Japanese heritage and a childhood immersed in the creative counterculture of Northern California's Bay Area in the 70s and 80s, Rumi's design philosophy follows a tradition of handcrafting as opposed to high-volume production. In addition to her design practice, Rumi has worked in the social services as a victim advocate and counselor. Working with individuals in both professional realms feeds her desire to impact her beloved community. The common thread that connects all of her work is that of the human connection. So if we could just have a little round of applause to introduce our two speakers for today. Very inspiring. So I'd just like to start open with today. Just a question to both of you. If you could tell us a little bit more about your journey in fashion design, what inspired you to start your brand, and how has that vision kind of evolved over time? And then Rumi, if we can start with you.
Okay. Hi, thank you for having me. Like my bio says, I knew pretty early on that fashion was something that excited me. Anytime I looked at certain images, it would make my heart beat a little faster. So there was definitely something there. Right after school, graduated from high school, I went straight into a fashion college and then went straight into working in the fashion industry up and down the West Coast in different capacities. And what was helpful about working for a lot of different companies was understanding what I wanted eventually for myself. So I model my business after a San Francisco designer who I ended up being her right-hand person. And it felt like a big leap for me. And I think really needed to develop the confidence to do my own and call it my own. And that took actually a long time, late bloomer. But I decided to do it. And so here I am.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay.
Matt, if we want to continue.
You gotta follow that. I'm Matt. Thanks for coming again, you guys. I think for me, when I actually started off with like wanting to do like styling stuff, in high school, I was kind of like, okay, it's either between like forensic science or like try to find a way to get to like this fashion thing, and I kind of didn't really know what to do with my life. Choosing like what path to take at that time. So I said, if fashion doesn't work out, then I'll do something in science, and vice versa. If not, I'll just find a job and that'd be it. So I challenged myself taking the leap and like, okay, well, let's try this fashion thing, because if I want to do styling, I want to know how to make clothes. So like my mom, them all like grandmas, and even my dad, them too, they do like sewing stuff here and there, just because of the fact that we didn't have money or the means to keep buying new stuff. And, as makers, that really inspired me to be like, okay, well, if this gift is within us, I might as well use it and, commoditize it in a sense of like, okay, if I can learn how to do this, we'll see where this leads. And so I challenged myself. And I say that because like I wasn't that skilled to begin with, like coming to school. I'm not saying I'm a master skill at it now. It just works for me at my skill level. But for me, it's like, I think challenges really inspired me to be like, okay, if you can do this thing, you can go to the next thing. So from styling, which I really love doing, evolved into like learning how to make stuff, and then finding a passion in that. And then like, I think for me, the ultimate thing that kind of like gave me the spark as like how Rumi would see images, it was me like when I first finally was making stuff and people felt like good in what they were wearing for me. So like for me, I was like, okay, this is cool. And then from there, I was just like, okay, well, let's just try this out. And I'm really super grassroots kind of thing. Like I didn't have a great mentor designer, you know, like, but for me, it's like I said, I think it was the challenges of like, if the resources aren't there, then I'm going to make it myself, because like, I didn't have a reference point. Nobody in my family owns businesses. Like, so for me, it's like very much just from the ground up. And I think that's the reason why like the tenacity I have as a designer, as a creative, as a community member is just like, a lot of the times I feel myself like, and as cheesy as it sounds, like if I can do it, anybody can, like, you know. So I think it's as much as you believe in yourself, and again, it sounds cheesy, but like these are things that I look back on and I'm like, if I hadn't believed in myself then, where would I be now, you know? So I got to keep reminding myself like this path wasn't easy and won't be easy, but it's something that I love, that I'm just going to keep fighting for. So that's where I'm at now.
Oh, I feel like that's so inspiring. Just learning more about, really, like you said, starting from the ground up. What are some challenges that I guess both of you encountered as you're moving forward, you know, having your own startup, trying to find that confidence, like you were mentioning, Rumi? Like, where do you kind of find that and continue and move forward with that motivation as you continue on with your business?
Okay, I'll go. I don't know what that loop is for. I think for me, the challenges I face, well, besides the normal like finances and all that stuff, that's like normal stuff to me. It's like, it's always gonna be a problem. And not problem in a bad way. It's just like, it's always gonna be the background of everything. Like finances are always good to have, obviously, for anything that you do in your life. But for me, it's like, I think it's constant motivation. Mentally, I think that when I approach design, it's a problem solving for me. So it's like, for me, the problem is, if it exists now, then why would I make it again? So for me, it's like being able to find creative motivation to be like, okay, what can we make that's gonna fill this void? I'm not just trying to fill the whole void, but I'm like, void personally first, and then like, you know, we move on from there, especially. And then, you know, it's great seeing other creators here, but it's like very saturated markets that we have in Hawaii, especially because it's just amazing how much people just take the approach of creating now. So for me, it's like, that's become a challenge of like, how do I stay forward as my own satisfaction, but also meet the consumer halfway there to compromise, you know? So that's been like the biggest challenge, I think, for me.
I would say as a creative, I can do some things really well, and then other things I cannot. So I'm terrible at marketing, and it is a business, right? At the end of the day, I'm trying to like make a living. And so I have to sell what I make. It's fun and all, but I have to, you know, in practical ways, I have to, it has to be profitable. And so marketing is like my thorn in my side. It's always the thing that's last on my, and you're so good at it. Matt's like kind of a natural, because you have this.
At least I'm good at that.
You are really good at it. So I think finding people to help me, and then finding people who understand my point of view. So yes, I could hire a marketing person or a company, but it's somebody who really kind of gets what I'm doing, gets as excited about things that I'm doing, understands where my product should sit in the marketplace, and who my clients are, who my customer is, and how to talk to them. All of that stuff is like this whole other side that you're not going to learn, you know, as a fashion graduate. No one's even going to talk to you about it in school. So that part, I think, for me is the biggest challenge.
You mentioned, you guys kind of both talked a little bit more about the importance of, I guess, finding that support system. I feel like one big thing is like community impact with your designs. There's that emphasis of being, you know, local designers. And I think personally, something that I'm curious about is how you've seen that reaction from the community, how you've seen that support like over the years, and what have been like some rewarding moments or times throughout your business.
I'd say, I think the only reason why I exist is because of community support. Like, you know, I'm not a big name in New York, let alone that much here either, but like, I've been like, so I think I've been talking to a lot of people lately, but my posture lately has been like, even though it's been chaotic, like I think my posture for life right now has been like very grateful for a lot of things that I've, you know, been able to experience, or like been able to like, you know, maintain and all that kind of things. Because honestly, like, if I'm being real, it was literally a dream, you know, and like for me to like anybody who can live their dream and like go for it and sacrificing the things that you need to sacrifice. To me, it's like, I don't care what. At the end of the day, I think it's always worth it. It's going to, like I said, it's going to be rough, but I think, yeah, for me, community support has always been number one for me, because that's how I kind of get by, you know, like I had this conversation earlier with some of the girls that work with me, and I told them, like, if I hadn't made connections the way I've done in an earlier part of my life, which means I was still in college, I honestly don't think I'll be able to do what I do now today, because of those connections that I've made that flourished into other things. And I feel like, especially with Hawaii, which is the focus of my business, we're a little old school here still. So like word of mouth is like a big thing for us. So like for me, it's like I've always tried to maintain a decent, you know, reputation and try to be cool. And, you know, really, I'm just very lucky that nowadays, like, I can choose where I want to be or choose who I want to be associated with. And there's nothing to do with ego or anything. It's just like, I've been through the mill of like chancing an opportunity and then it goes sour, or like chancing it with somebody and then it just goes not the way that I would plan to. So for me, it's like a lot of the trial and error things has made me very, I guess, open my eyes more and to be like, okay, so this is what business is about. You know, you choose your company you want to be with, and you later on you're either going to grow with them or you're going to go without them. Like, you know, and I feel like it's also healthy to like outgrow those kinds of relationships, because, and it's nothing like about being like what you do for me, what I can do for you. It's more like, if it's not working anymore, I think that's something that I've noticed. Of like, okay, well, it's time to detach, and like maybe we grow apart. And that I also see that as something healthy as well, you know. And whoever I've had those kind of, I guess, for lack of better terms, negative relationships with them, I don't wish bad on them. I just wish that things could have been better, you know. But then maybe again, this is like something that needed to happen in order for both of us to grow, you know. So a lot of the times I think about what I'm inspired by the most. And I think it's people ultimately, you know, like what they do and how they live their lives. And my favorite thing to do is like, if I could get paid to sit down at the mall and like profile people that walk by you, I'd be a millionaire, because that's like my favorite thing to do. But like, for me, it's like, without people, I don't think that I would be as inspired as it is. And, you know, I try to be like, oh, I'm inspired by nature, or oh, I'm inspired by... No, I think ultimately I'm inspired by people, you know? So for me, community is always number one. And then, you know, and it's a skill that I also didn't have. When I first started out, I was like, I hate networking. You're bad at marketing. Like I think you're good at networking because you're a better people person than I am. But like, it's funny because I'm kind of awkward when I first like talk to people, because I'm like, what do I talk to these people about, you know? So I think my new defense mechanism has been like, pretend you know what the hell you're talking about. That way you just like keep going, you know? So for me, even with public speaking, it took me a lot of time to like get even comfortable to even sit in front of people to talk, you know? And if you ask me to do this like fresh out of college, I'd be like, heck no, like I'm done, you know? So for me, it's like knowing that I have the support, knowing that I have a trajectory of like where I want to be, even if it's a slow progress, like slow is better than not going at all. And then for me, it's like always remembering who your people are, who you do it for, and who you're taking with you. You know what I mean? So for me, that's, like you said, community to me is like everything. Yeah.
Well said. I do think it's the relationships. Yeah, I can't even trust. Relationships, right? Relationships with the people who sew my clothes, the relationships with the fabric reps that like, and Hawaii is a really, really it's a small town, right? And so, like you can't honk at the person you're behind because you're going to pull into the parking lot of the preschool, like it together. There is that, but also Hawaii can be a really great place as a new person, somebody who's starting something new, because there is that like we're all in this together sort of feel. And so the nice thing about that is people really want you to succeed. People are very supportive. I remember I launched my first collection. It was just 5 pieces, dresses, wasn't really super cohesive, but this other designer I met hooked me up with the Honolulu magazine stylist, and they ran a story. Like I didn't have to pitch anything, you know, it was like amazing. And so there is that sort of spirit of we want you to succeed, we're all in this together, you know. And then the other side of that is I think it could be easy to maybe not stretch yourself and push yourself past that sometimes. So I think getting feedback from clients and understanding. Obviously now, although with this generation with so much access to information and everything online, it feels a little more connected, right, to the outside world. But I still think that for me, it's definitely the connections I have with everybody in my orbit, right? All other designers, people for magazines, stylists, other people in the industry, high tide lifts all boats, right? So we all want each other to succeed. And I think everybody has something different to offer. There are a lot of people doing fashion more than ever now here. So I don't know. I think competition is good. I think it kind of pushes you to try to do something a little different than what everybody else is doing. So, but I do think during COVID too, I noticed I got all these online orders from people I never met. And I was like, wow, this is like so nice. People really want you to survive and thrive. So.
Right.
Yeah.
And I like that you touched upon kind of the saturated market, right? The fashion industry in Hawaii specifically. We have so many amazing local brands and designers. Just kind of, I view a lot of artists and designers as, you're creating your own work and the importance of that originality. Do you ever find yourself in kind of like a creative block of like, how do I, top what I just released, new collections, new designs? What is that process kind of like for you? And how is it to overcome that and still continue to release new work?
I feel like that creative block is like the person that lives right next to me now. It happens more often than I would like it to, but I also think like, instead of having a negative connotation with it, I think I've come to terms with like, maybe a block means like, it's time to rest. And I'm trying to be more intentional about resting because my brain doesn't sleep at all, which I wouldn't want it to not keep thinking, but like with things that being a one-man show kind of thing too, like, like doing everything for so long, I think for me, it's like, I've innately take on this like invisible burden of like, oh my God, like, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. But then at the same time, I think like burnout is so real. And then like, with me thinking that I'm like always ahead of the game or like, like, oh, I think I'm doing the best thing ever. And then I'm like doing it and I make it. And it's just like, oh, this is so whack. Or like, this is not what I wanted. So for me, it's been a lot of like pushing that big stone up the hill and then eventually be like, do I want to keep pushing this stone or just let it flatten me and just start something new, So for me, it's like, I think, again, the word is challenging, right? It's like, if I don't challenge myself to be a better version of myself or do better versions of what I've done or, I think that's important. But at the same time, when I do get creative blocks, I'm like, I got to start listening to like what my body might be saying to me at that point, I mean, hate to sound all spiritual about it, but like, I think that connects with everything, So for me, it's like, I've been so guilty about taking time off, taking, like a 2-hour break instead of a 1-hour break, and like scroll on my phone for that long or whatever it may be. But I think it's important to have these so-called breaks because you got to fuel the fire, you know what I mean? And if you don't have the gas, then you ain't going anywhere. So I think I've been trying to intentionally tell myself like, okay, creative block means like, okay, take some time off, like go into nature or like challenge yourself and go try to sketch things out. Or even if it's not something final, like just try to keep cognitive in a sense of like, it's still in the realm of like the work that you do, but like do it differently. Like, like, so for me, it's like, as simple as like even just going for like a walk or like, even when I used to live by the Oʻahu, like walk around the Oʻahu. Music is my big thing too. So it's like finding ways to escape has been helping me a lot with creative blocks, but I would be lying if I'm saying they don't come as often as I would like them to. But for me, it's like, okay, now that I'm older, how do I deal with that? And rather than like avoid it or try to pretend it's not happening, I think I spend more time with it and be like, okay, so like, what's the problem? So for me, it's like, starts off with not being inspired. So like for me, it's like if I have to find new ways of being inspired or, just start challenging yourself more because it does get comfortable and be like, okay, well, things are selling. So like, who cares, So it's like, no, like as creatives, as no matter what field you're in, I think if you start becoming complacent, that's the big problem for me, You know, and I think that's what I fear the most, of being like comfortable, like too comfortable. You know what I mean? Like, I love being comfortable, don't get me wrong, but if it's like getting a little too comfortable, that's when I feel myself like, okay, I have time to change things up. You know, so I think that comes and goes a lot more often than it used to, though, for me.
I would say I've learned to just trust. Like, if you're a creative person or you have creative ideas, just trust that stuff will come up for you. Just trust and rest and be with your family and friends and do things that are fun for you and take breaks and do something different, you know, try a different medium, or because if you're a creative person, ideas are going to come. But I do think rest is huge. I think that's really important. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Matt. But I think just trust that, I don't know, is that like easy to say, right? It's easy for me to say because I'm not in school and I don't have assignments that come due. But I think, yeah, I would just say, just trust that you're not going to run out of ideas. And like, honest, like if I run out of ideas and I don't make another shirt, like it's fine. Nobody's going to die because I didn't design a new
People
shirt.
still moving on.
It's okay. Yeah, it's okay. And I can be creative in other ways. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that, the important, work-life balance in the sense of like, it's okay to, give yourself breaks. You don't have to have that perfectionist mindset all the time. Although it is harder, like, in practice than when you're actually saying it. Yeah. One thing that I kind of like that you guys touched upon is, going back to, the days that you're in college or like when you're first starting out. Is there anything that you'd want to share to like your younger self as far as advice or things that you wish you knew before starting out?
Yeah, I mean, I think as easy as like, I mean, again, I'm not like sugarcoating it when I say it's been hard for me to like from day one, So for me, it's like, if you already feel like you cannot take the risk now, what makes you think you're gonna be able to take the risk later? Like, you know what I mean? So for what I'm trying to get at is like, when I was in college, I was like, literally scared. I was like, there's no companies that I want to work for. There's no companies who are probably gonna hire me because I don't have the skill set. And I had this ego thing of like, well, I went to college, so that means I have a better leg up on this competition. I was like, well, there's also people with more skill. There's also people who found a backdoor way to work for this job that you might want. So for me, it's like, how do I get a head start on like what I want to do that's not happening in Hawaii at the moment, or at least not as what I thought. And then like, for me, it's like, okay, well, I got to throw myself into the flames. So luckily I've had friends who were putting on events, these little underground happenings around Chinatown at the time. This is like 2008, 2009, right before I graduated. It was so fun, but it was just like, for me, it's like, had I not thrown myself into the fire then, I honestly can say I wouldn't even be doing this right now. And this is before I graduated college. Thankfully, my friend was a DJ on KTUH, and he did these monthly events called, what was it called? He had a cool name for it. So cool, I can't remember. But he had his last event, and he was like, I know you're only a junior in school, and you just, start seeing me. I was like, dude, I'm so scared. I'm not doing this fashion show. So every event he had was art, music, and fashion. So it had like people doing live art. There's a little fashion segment, and then there's like up and coming underground artists. It was such a great like time. And I'm like, now that I think about it, I'm like, oh crap, I'm old. But I'm like, had I not engulfed myself into that already, I don't know what I'd be doing right now, to be honest. So for me, it's like, because of that initial start, and I tell him this all the time. He works for, works for Boeing, Jake Miyasato, and Mika them. But every time I see him, I was like, dude, because he literally put my name on the flyer without me knowing. And he's like, oh, your name's on the flyer, so you got to do it. I was like, okay. So I literally waited to the last minute I knew to put together these three really, now that I think about it, it wasn't well made, but it's only for a fashion show, I'm not trying to sell it. So I made 3 outfits in 4 hours.
Wow.
Took that shit off my thing, ran to town, met these 3 girls that were doing our shows before, texting them like, hey, I'm here, don't be late. Even though you're not getting paid for this, nobody is. And we did the show, and I literally left the thing being like, oh, that was fun. And then back in the day, it was MySpace, not Instagram. And people was like flooding the inbox of like, love your stuff. How can I shoot it? How can I buy it? And I'm like, wait, is this real? You know, so for me, it's like, okay, so like, here's this little country kid who thought nothing of his life. And I took this risk and I was like, okay, well, this could be something, you know? And again, I had no reference point. I had nobody to talk to this about. So I was like always alone with my thoughts. So I was like, okay, let's just keep going. So, and that's why to run it back, it's like, had I not made these connections earlier, like I don't know. So for me, it's like, I think me taking that risk of like, I don't know what's about to happen, but it feels amazing and it feels good. So I'm going to trust my intuition and just go for it. And I think that's been my mantra, just like, hey, you never know until you try. You know what I mean? Like, so I think just trying is like always the one thing you can do. You know, who's to say if you failed or succeeded, you know, like that looks different in everybody's different eyes, you know? So, yeah.
There is no try.
Only do. I got you.
Yeah.
Similarly, I think just try, just do the thing, you know, make the thing, see how it turns out. It's fashion. It's okay. You know, play with different ideas, collaborate, you know, hit up your friends who do something different. I love collaborating. I personally I don't design in print. I don't wear print, but my favorite collaborations are with print artists because they push me to see things in a totally different way that I wouldn't be able to see on my own. So yeah, I love collaboration. And then you're kind of in it together with somebody else too. Yeah.
Or force you to do things like me.
Yes. 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 If you need a push, just ask Matt.
Yeah, I really enjoy. I like hearing more about like the design process too. If I could hear a little bit more about that for each of you, what that kind of process is like, and maybe some like inspiration that you draw from, and everything like that. Yeah.
I think for me, I mean, it's probably the same for you, but I design off of emotion, like feeling. So I'm like, if I'm feeling lazy, I want to make sure the outfit is the best, laziest outfit. And by lazy, I mean like, I'm a very easy person, as you can see. I like to just wear t-shirt, pants, barely shorts. But like, you know, I don't know, maybe because I'm getting like a little like better about like just not caring about what I wear. It's like accepting the fact that, you know, it's okay to just wear whatever I want. But I think for me, my philosophy is like, if it feels good, it's gonna look good. You know what I mean? So like, I like easy to wear pieces myself. So I think for me, I inject that into a lot of like how I'm feeling. Like if I'm feeling lazy, I just want to be less complicated. You're throwing this shit on and you're out the door. Like, you know what I mean? So for me, it's like, as just keep going. Like, you know, like, it's just like, I'm very impatient too. So like, I just like the less time I have to worry about what to wear. And if it's like easy to wear, then that's the kind of like mentality I'm taking to be like, I want this to be well made, easy to wear, and wear it as much times as you want. And like, so for me, it's like, if I'm feeling fancy, like, oh, maybe a nice little dress, you know, but I mean, I suck at making dresses. But, you know, so for me, it's like, again, it's emotions. Like, I just feel like, okay, I feel like I should be making these things, and I make them, and then I edit, and I love editing because, you know, less work to do. And then it's like, how I design too is like very much like outfitted. So like, I like to make the outfit first and then compile it together in something conventional, and then like think about like unconventional ways people could probably wear this. Because for me, it's like, if people are invested in me and the pieces that I make for them, I want them to, one, be quality. And then two is like, I'm not the type to be like, oh, you only wear this once. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I want you to keep wearing it and find different ways and have fun with it, you know? So again, however you feel you want to put it together is very important to me. So I think that's the way I've figured out like how I put out whatever I want to put out, kind of thing.
It's interesting because I think you definitely see things as a stylist.
Yeah, I do.
Like you have a whole vision, right? When you have an idea, you just see it, and then you see the photo shoot, you see the model. And
it's very backwards for me.
Yeah,
it's like very backwards. Like I see it as like a full thing, and then I deconstruct. Yeah. And then I compile it together, and then it becomes like a collection. Like, you know what I mean? So like,
super different process. I know for me, it's fabric. It starts with the fabric. Like, I will just buy fabric because I love the fabric, and then I kind of design off of that. So the fabric kind of tells me what it wants to be.
But you're good at that though.
I mean, I think we're both good at our thing, right? And then I think as a woman too, I'm always just thinking about how I want to dress myself,
Right.
which you sort of described too. But I do think that I'm less conceptual and I'm probably more practical. And also, like I came up in an era when there was no digital anything. And so everything I learned was hand by hand, right? So draping, pattern cutting, like I do everything by hand. And so when I'm designing something, I'm already thinking about how does it go put together? How is it finished? I want the hem to stay like this, but does that mean it has to have a big facing? Or, I don't want a little rolled hem, so I want it to stand. Like I'm always thinking about how it gets put together, which I think is maybe a little unusual. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm always thinking, and then I'm always thinking too about like, well, when it comes to production, if I have a dozen of them and I'm taking them to my sewer, I want it to be as easy for her to have the finished look I want. And then, so what does my pattern have to look like? What kind of placket is it? Is it just a rolled placket or does it have a wide facing? Like, which way do the buttonholes go? Like all of those things I'm already thinking about before I've even put my pencil to my paper.
Interesting. Yeah.
So there's that aspect that's probably a little different now with so much digital.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Have you both tried to, I guess, evolve like the different types of technique that you have over time? You mentioned digital is like a newer thing that's up and coming, or do you like to stick more with what you've, are confident in?
I'm really fast at doing things by hand.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just really fast at it. Yeah.
Like when I had I don't know if I told you a story, but when I was producing in LA, and then the lady was like, "Oh, I do like," she was charging me like kind of expensive to make my markers, and I was like, we remember talking to my peers. I was like, "How much do you pay to get your markers done?" And I was like, "Well, she's charging me $120, which adds to the cost of the goods." And I'm like, "What?" And then and to be honest, when I went in, kind of unannounced, she had this big roll of paper on her old school loft, like anything you can think about, like a pre-production space that they have these is cool. Like she just had the whole paper on. She's like this little Armenian lady, and she's like looks up and she's like, "Yes," like super sassy, And I'm like scared, and I'm like, "Oh hi, I'm Matt. Hello." Like don't know how to say because she's already like caught me off guard, and she'd be like, "Oh, I'm working on your marker now." And then when I saw her actually hand doing it, and I was like, "Okay, it's worth it. $120, take my money anytime."
Wow.
So for me, it's like anything analog, I'm always like such a geek about it. I'm like, "Oh, what are you doing? Let me see." Like, so for me, like that like excited me so much. So it's funny you mention things by hand because, I try to do the digital thing, and I grew up in the sense of, digital was cool, but if anybody was my classmates during my years, they knew that I sucked at it. So I didn't do well in that class.
And it's also a question of volume. Like if you're doing a huge volume, then absolutely.
I think I've accepted the way that my brand is, and it's not mass, obviously. Yeah. So like, I appreciate slow goods. So I think my point that I'm trying to make with my brand is like educating people about what's important about slow made goods. So I think that's, for me, like, it's funny because I talk about this with you sometimes, and like I've never designed something with a specific gender, specific size, specific age, because like I want everybody to enjoy it, and like it's funny like how it's so trendy now to be like, "Oh, I make this kind of clothes," and I'm just like, well, I never thought about that because it was never a problem for me. You know what I mean? Like, so for me, it's like how things are going. It feels good to know that I've already been like thinking about these things or innately already been the DNA of my brand from day one. So for me, it's like, okay, well, I guess I was doing something right. So, but again, getting comfortable with the whole digital thing, I think I kind of want to push myself to be kind of better at it. But like for instance, when Sana would make our patterns, and
the equipment is very expensive.
Yeah. So it's
programs are very expensive. Yeah. They're constantly changing. Yeah. That's never going to stop, right? And so I don't know, at this stage in my life and in my company, I don't know. I can't see myself sort of evolving into doing anything very different.
Very samurai.
There's also a lot of talk of automation, automation and production. And like, show me how you're going to automate making a collared shirt. I can't. Show me.
Yeah.
You can put a card together. The card doesn't have like, the pieces are rigid and it's very predictable where your holes are. But I don't know how you're going to automate making fashion. I just don't see it.
Right.
I do think too, like speaking of like digital, if you want to get like more digital sense of like how there's a lot of makers now, like I guess because especially during COVID, people learn how to pick up hobbies. So like I fully throw myself into like the whole sewing Instagram and TikTok thing to just like see people, because I geek out on that stuff. So for me, it's like cool to see like people still kind of like taking an old technique of sewing and like modernizing it in their everyday way, because like it is, I don't know, I always tell people, like all my friends, like, bro, just get a sewing machine and learn how to hem your own damn pants, because you know how much you would save doing that shit, So it's like, but for me, it's like, I'm hopeful that like sewing and like designing, it's two different things, to be honest. But like, I feel like, I'm hopeful that there is a creative push now of people wanting to create and share that because of the digital stuff. So I find that to be very comforting in a sense of like, oh, that's cool that people are in, obviously it's for instant gratification, which I'd be lying if I wasn't doing the same thing. But like, I think it's cool that people are willing to challenge themselves and make something, put it out there, and just see what happens. So I think in a sense, there's always gonna be a balance, right? It's like, I don't want to do digital stuff because I like analog, and like, but then in a sense of social media, it's like, okay, it's good because you put yourself out there and like, you kind of promote that kind of things, which I think is great. But at the same time, there's still like a lot of noise, and so for me, it's like, how do you break through that noise, or like, how do you embrace the noise? So I think there's always going to be a 50-50 thing with that.
Yeah, one big thing that I feel like I've heard from both of you is the importance of having a message with your clothing and what you kind of want to have other people, your customers, people that buy your products, what they want to feel, when they're wearing your clothes. What are those messages for each of you, and why do you think that that's important to give and communicate to the community?
I mean, I do think kind of what Matt was saying about like sewing and mending, like there's this, kind of movement to buy vintage or buy secondhand and mend and alter. I think I too want to educate people about why are some clothes so cheap? And I think the message is starting to reach more people, but I don't think it's sort of sunk into like the masses. And I remember watching, I can't remember what documentary it was, but it was about fast fashion. And
was it The Cost of Fashion or something like that? The one on Netflix?
Maybe. But this line just broke my heart. They were interviewing this industry executive who owned factories, like huge factories. And they were talking about, production and what it takes and cost and pricing things out. And he said a line that I'll never forget. He said, fashion follows poverty. And he meant if China gets too expensive to produce because China has now become a world leader, as just like the US, and labor is more expensive and the younger people aren't willing to sit in a factory and sew like their mothers and grandmothers. And so it's too expensive. So now we have to move. Where do we move it? Where do I move all my machines and equipment next? To the next poorest country. That's so awful. It's so awful, but we want the $4.99 t-shirt. And so I don't see a big fashion revolution coming anytime soon, but I think part of what I do and part of what Matt is talking about in terms of slow fashion and just really talking about your process to the customer is that it will, sort of ripple out and people will start to understand the value of what you're doing and why it costs, $185 for a pair of my pants versus, $60 at the Gap or something like that. So I can't imagine doing what I'm doing any other way, because I don't think I could be a happy person participating in that system of exploitation. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I still shop at Zara sometimes. You know, sometimes they have really good shoes on sale. And so it's not that I'm perfect at it either, but like I think education can go a long way. Spending on things that you value so that you wear them for a long time, giving them another life cycle by handing it down or reselling, that kind of thing. So I can't remember your original question.
The message of your company.
Oh, yeah. So, you know, fashion is inherently harmful. So if I can minimize the amount of harm, I guess. Yeah. But I still love clothes. I still love fashion. I still get excited about things. I'm constantly wanting to try new things. So it is who I am, part of me.
Yeah. I mean, all of that too. But I think the message that I want for people to have, especially when wearing the clothes, is like, I don't know. I just want people to feel good, you know? And I feel like ultimately in life, we all try to be good people, right? So I feel like if you feel good, you feel like you look good, you do good things, you know? And, you know, again, we're not all perfect, you know? But like, if I can be part of somebody's journey of like, for instance, like this woman like texted me, like emailed me like a couple of months ago saying like, hey, I wore this skirt that I bought from you in 2012 and I got the job. And I was like, oh shit, like that's cool. Like, you know what I mean? I was like, damn, that's so, those are the things that like, I guess it could be life as I don't do things for validation, but the validation is not my priority. Like, you know what I mean? But that for me, I was like, I don't even know you, lady. But like, that just like made my day 20 times better. Like, you know what I mean? Cause like, for me, it's like, if I can give you the confidence to do something by like wearing it, that to me speaks more volumes than if I landed a spot on like Vogue magazine or something. Like, you know what I mean? For me, it's like, again, I start off with the roots, you know what I mean? And without the roots, you can't grow. So for people who've been with me from day one and still, even if they're not as active in like consuming stuff from me, they still see me, they still see what I do. And like, for me, that's like telling of like, okay, so now I think I've moved into brand. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, so for people to know that the brand is here for you every step of your life, growing with you. You know, women give birth, they get pregnant. I want to be there for that too. Like, you know, like we change sizes as we grow older. We can't help that. So like, for me, it's like, I want to be there for every phase of life, you know? And I think that's what inspires me the most, to just be there to celebrate the big things and the little things too, you know? So I think that's what the messaging I want to put out for clothes. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you both for sharing that.
Course,
I think that's like really powerful just to hear about, you know, both of your purposes with your brands and everything that you have moving forward. Something that I'm kind of curious too is a little bit more about how you handle that side, but then also balancing more of the business aspects of both of your brands. Like, how has that been throughout the years? And what are some difficulties that come with handling more of the business aspects?
I'm not good at that at all. But I mean, I do.
Right.
What I can.
So it's I just, because, you know, this is a center for entrepreneurship. And I thought I knew what the definition of entrepreneur was, but I didn't until I just looked it up. And it said a person who organizes, this is according to Oxford, and operates a business or businesses taking on greater than normal financial risk in order to do so. I didn't know that was
I didn't know either.
Yeah.
I would be lying if I said it.
And so, I'm definitely an entrepreneur. I will be very frank, fashion is not a moneymaker.
No.
It is not a career where you go to make hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's just not. I think if you can get a position with a large corporation as a designer, you could potentially make, you know, $150,000. But you're competing with a lot of other really talented people from around the world. If you are a solopreneur, I mean, I've yet to meet somebody who's
me, obviously,
financially satisfied, let's say. It's a very capital heavy endeavor. you have to buy the fabric up front, usually, right, if you're starting. In Hawaii, there are no resources. You can't, there's really no place to go to buy fabric. There are very few places. There's not a lot of selection. I mean, Hawaii is like uphill in the snow both ways. It's really hard. You probably have to travel, you know, so you have to budget for that. And yeah, it's just like, if you want to be rich, don't do this.
Exactly.
This is not it.
You want to be sad and broke and like frustrated with yourself every day.
You know, the rent for every place, like you want to rent a studio, forget it. It's so expensive here. There's this like, you're going to work out of your house. You're going to work out of a bedroom or something first.
And I've done that too for like a long time.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. You know,
the room has seen me in every form of my life, I think, my rooms, you know?
Yeah. It's
crazy. I remember, okay, if I can, like, first starting off, I was like, all right, here I am. Hey, welcome, you know, to my room. I literally had those like Costco, like white tables. It was my cutting table. I had bins. I got rid of my bed. I ended up getting a fold out futon to make more space in my little ass room. And like literally would wake up and be like, yeah, I'm going to work. Well, here it is. And it was like bins of fabric. And like, I had a little space in my closet, I'm like, okay, well, here's my patterns. And like, I'll just make stuff and hopefully somebody wants it, you know? And one thing led to another, and you get a design studio space, and you're like, great, how am I going to afford this space now?
Yeah.
You know, so cost in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And people think I'm joking when I say it. Just don't do it.
Yeah.
Just don't do it. Please, just go get a real job that pays you way more than your life would ever want. Like, but no, I think for me, I think it's something that I've always wanted. You know, freedom to create, I think, is like the biggest gift that anybody could ever been given. And if you can make money off of it, cool. And if you don't, still cool. You know, like, I think for me, it's like, it's a flex. You know, I can make something. And if I can dream of something and make it happen, I'm like, can you do that? Like, you know what I mean? For me, it's like a weird way of being like, sure, I don't have a house on the hills, but do I even want a house on the hills? No, I don't. And, you know, so it's like, sure, I don't have the fanciest car. Do I want a fancy car? No, because I'm thrashy, you know? So it's like,
yeah, what do you value?
What do I value in my life, you know? And for me, it's like, if I can wake up every day with new ideas, even though they may not come to life, like, and I can jot those ideas down or draw them out and like eventually go back to them and like still answer to myself in a sense. Like, that's what I've always wanted, you know? And I may not be the richest person, but like, what is rich these days, you know? Like, if I have all the time in the world, I feel like that's the biggest luxury to me. So I'm rich that way. You know,
Agreed. It's really important though to understand finance.
No, for sure.
It's really important to understand. I wrote a business plan when I first, so I've been in Hawaii for well over 25 years now. But when I first moved here, I wrote a business plan and I realized it was very, very valuable experience, because what I realized is I have no business starting a business in Hawaii where I don't know anybody. It didn't make any sense. And I learned that from writing my business plan. Over the years, I, you know, actively made connections, put myself out there, met other designers, and then it, you know, eventually made sense to try. You know, have a separate bank account for your business. Don't commingle your money. Seriously, it's simple stuff like that. It's try to keep good records, pay your taxes. Just the simple basic stuff will help you not stress, because it's stressful enough to run a business. But my accountant taught me to do financial Fridays. So every Friday, I go through my, I go through my QuickBooks and I reconcile everything. So just stuff like that, just things that can help you streamline. And then the other thing I will say is, anytime I've taken like a little step that felt uncomfortable, that was like a little more money than I felt like I could bring in, somehow I've been able to like meet that, like little incrementally. Like if you had told me 5 years ago I would be in this studio and, doing what I'm doing, I would have thought like, I don't know how that's going to happen.
Right.
But incrementally, different people come into your life, you meet different people, different situations present themselves. So I think part of it too is just grinding, doing the work, put yourself out there.
I think it all starts off with grit, you know?
Yeah.
Because grit is like you can't be taught that, you know what I mean? Like you kind of like
being a little uncomfortable.
Get those elbows dirty, you know? Like whatever, you know? Like to me, it's like I grew up on that. So it's like, I don't know how else to be. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, if you tell me no, I swear to God, you can tell me yes. But like, I cannot take no for an answer. And not because like, I'm spoiled brat, because if I was a spoiled brat, I have all the money in the world right now and I wouldn't be having to talk to anybody because, you know, but so for me, it's like, I think as like opportunity presents itself, if it's not there, then make it, you know, like, I hate the idea of like, I gotta move in order to make and sure, for some people, it is true. Like, you know, like it's hard living in Hawaii, you know, I'm not gonna lie about that. Like, but do I want to be anywhere else in the world? Hell no. Like, you know what I mean? So for me, it's like, why go to another place that has the solution instead of bringing the solution to where you're at? You know what I mean? That way the people can feed off of that solution and everybody can help solve a problem, you know? Right. So if to me, it's like making house where you're at now will eventually build a neighborhood. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, I don't want people thinking like, oh, I got to go to New York. Oh, I got to go LA. Well, guess what? Like people work remote anyway. So like you can work at home if you want to, like, you know, and for me, it's like hearing all my friends' stories who worked in fashion industries in New York and LA, they're like, I hate it. I'm coming home. I'm going to start my family. And I'm like, and again, they took the risk, you know, but like, for me, it's like, it's comforting knowing that like, okay, I kind of tried something to be at home before deciding whether I'm going to move or not. So for me, it's like, you got to roll with the punches, you know, like it's not going to be easy, but there's a little beauty in it all, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think that all of that advice is really important because it's that balance, right? Of wanting to be realistic, but also how much can you push yourself? Right. How much perseverance can you have going into this industry and just the different things that are important to take into consideration. Right. So I just wanted to thank both of you again so much for your time today. If we can have another round of applause for our speakers. And then I don't know if we have time for some questions from the audience. If anyone has any burning questions, we can open it up to everyone right now. Yes.
So thank you very much for telling us a very inspiring story. So can you tell me, like, as a fashion designer, how can you identify the trend of the next season? Like what the customer will like the next season? And how about the production cost? Like when you need to produce it?
Right. So, I think, well, my business model before when I was producing in Los Angeles was like what Rumi says, like, I don't know, I'm going to find this money to like front up all this production costs right now, but somehow I found it. So obviously it was there. So like for me, it's like I've changed my model to like most of the things I do is made to order now. And obviously it's a financial help with that, but like I also am trying to counter overproduction. So it's like whatever we can make within the means of what I budget for each season, or what I do is like little capsules too. Like I don't really follow seasons or scheduling when it comes to fashion stuff. Like I just don't have time for that or like really care, to be honest. Like I just think like I do things when I want to. So for me, it's like, how do I keep things small batch? How do I keep things made to order? Again, it lowers the cost for us. It also, doesn't really put into too much overproduction. So a lot of it's the stuff that I'm doing now. It's been on what I've been experimenting with, but I also do have help from smaller production sewers and all that kind of stuff too, from time to time to help. But then it's like also, for me, it's worth it because it's like locally produced or, kind of thing. So I've been really experimenting with different levels of like having to address a collection or something like that nowadays. Yeah.
For large companies, there are trend forecasting companies. They charge hundreds and thousands of dollars for the information. I think for us, as a small independent brand, I don't think we're thinking about that necessarily. I don't think we are thinking about like, well, how can I be on trend?
Right. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it is very expensive to produce it. Very, very, very expensive. Yeah.
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 Of course.
I know you've thought about this. What do you think is your, and technology aside, automation aside, what do you think is your next incremental breakthrough? What's kind of the milestone that you're thinking about right now?
I'm trying to expand my branding to be more lifestyle. So like I want to get into like home goods. I wanted to get into kitchenware. I want to get into every crevice of your life is what I'm trying to get at. So for me, incrementally is like I'm experimenting with like the place I love the most is your bed. So like I want to do like bedding. I want to do scents. I want to do all this stuff. So for me, it's like what stuff that I can't live without that I want to present to my consumers. You know, so for me, it's like I've been trying to like think incrementally of like what are those steps now that what does that look like? You know, so that's sort of product. You know,
I will say I've always had a dream of being very vertically integrated. Like I would love to purchase all the machines that I want to do special things and be kind of vertical. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any? Oh, right here.
How do you find people to sew for you?
ooh.
Craigslist. That's
If
how I
you
found
find something-
seamstress.
I mean, if somebody has that,
It's hard. Yeah.
honestly, it happens by like word of mouth. I feel like, and obviously intentional
hidden.
looking. There, honestly, it's a
hidden
dying.
here.
It's a dying art.
Yeah,
It's,
there's no like garment district here.
I went to a
right?
presentation with Ward and Howard Hughes like 6 years ago, I think, and it was Aloha's shirt one.
Mhm.
And the statistics like was staggering. We went from 104 manufacturers to not even just confidently, but maybe 4 now. Like,
Well, and a lot of them are hidden. So
Yeah,
there's a
and-
lot of like small
Mhm.
companies who then farm out like to
Yeah.
these home sewers. And so they might have like an actual company and then you drop all your product off or your cuts or the whatever
Yeah.
the agreement is. And then they have people all day long coming and going in minivans,
Yeah.
picking up your stuff and then dropping off. Like
they're there. It's just,
there, but it's not like
I wish I knew.
It's
Like-
not like an organized
Yeah.
fashion district.
Yeah.
So
It
you
just feels very like kind of gatekept.
that too. And honestly, if I did know, I would
Yeah.
probably tell people so that way we can
Yeah.
promote to like, you know, but it's been an ongoing issue about like having to find locally
sewers are
local
aging
sewers.
out.
That too.
Yeah, the generation that made the fashion industry here in Hawaii, because there was a very thriving fashion industry here a couple generations ago, but
Yeah.
they're all aged out. It's still a lot of immigrant labor. I'm not sure if they're following labor laws,
Right.
you know, things like that. And so it's tricky.
I've
Yeah.
seen some people message me about like small up and coming little like small batch sewing things out here. So
Yeah.
it's hopeful, but like at the same time, it's a very, I don't know, it's a touchy situation for me. Man.
Yeah,
I get
I've
like
heard the
frustrated
quality
about,
side-
I get
the
frustrated about a lot of
quality
it.
is
So
sometimes not there.
Yeah,
It
it's
just
a-
depends. So I put an ad on Craigslist and found the woman that I've been working with for the
Oh,
last
wow.
10 years.
Oh, that's
you
amazing.
been with her that long?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.